The tide has turned. The free men of the world are marching together to victory. I have full confidence in your courage, devotion to duty, and skill in battle. We will accept nothing less than full victory.
D-Day, referred to such because the unknown day the attack was to occur, was a large-scale Allied attack against the Nazis in World War II, using air, land, and sea operations to storm the Normandy beach in northern France and drive out the Nazi forces. General Eisenhower, the leader of the force, declared, "We will accept nothing less than full victory," while declaring the invasion the Great Crusade. Soldiers from various divisions throughout the United States Army and various units throughout the entire Allied force stormed the beaches in Normandy in a full assault using amphibious landing and airborne operations. Soldiers landed on the beach, assaulting the Nazi elements and taking immediate enemy fire. Many soldiers did not even make it onto the beach, as they were gunned down, either still in the sky or still on the water off of the beach. Over 150,000 soldiers participated in this assault, and 4,000 were killed, with 10,000 total casualties. On average, the paratrooper that jumped into Normandy on D-Day weighed about 90 to 120 pounds more than their actual body weight, just because of the gear they were carrying. This included the parachute pack, their weapons and ammunition, communications equipment, and a bag of other gear they had to carry. After landing, they removed their parachute but still had to carry the remaining gear into combat. This was after a long fall from the sky and landing either on the beach or in the water at a high rate of speed. Those who were brought in by boat, on the other hand, had many things to worry about. Some felt seasick on their way into the beach because of continuous rocking of the boat. After the boat stopped, these men had to then move through the deep water, sometimes about neck deep, just to get to shore, still carrying all of their heavy gear. Once on land, all of those men then had to maneuver through the sands of the beach, adding more physical stress to an already stressful fight. Maneuvering would have meant carrying their heavy gear and weapons, sometimes running to escape enemy fire. For many, D-Day brought with it a feeling of excitement. Alan Steffens, a pilot on that day, explains the excitement he felt during the invasion, knowing that he was a part of what was going to make history. Others on the ground, though feeling some excitement, also felt a great sense of fear for their life and the unknown. As they climbed off of the boat and into the waters, men were being shot by the Nazi forces, and there was not much that could be done because the enemy was not yet observed. Mortars landed in the water, and machine gun bullets sprayed these soldiers who were fighting to make their way to shore. Adrenaline would have been high in these soldiers as they tried to make their way to shore. As they could not escape, and because they could not yet see the enemy they were fighting, many men were forced into a posturing position, trying to shoot towards the enemy as if to show that they were still fighting and capable of fighting. Over 10,000 casualties were sustained during the invasion, with over 4,000 of those casualties killed in action. Soldiers were forced to see the soldier to their left and to the right being gunned down by the enemy forces. Jim Martin recalls seeing one of his good friends being killed right next to him during the assault, still bringing a tear to his eye even 70 years later. Many of these soldiers were unable to even reach the beach before they were wounded or killed. Some soldiers, like Private Carlton Barrett, who received a Congressional Medal of Honor, moved from the beach and waded through the deep waters to save those who were wounded or killed off of the shore. Eisenhower, in his address, referred to the Nazis as the German war machine, almost as if to take away the human factor of what the soldiers were going to fight. This echoes the sentiment of the time, observing the Nazis as horrible, with very few references to their humanity. During combat, the enemy is often dehumanized in order to make the killing response easier on the soldier. If they are not killing other humans, then it makes it easier for them to pull the trigger and take another life. During this war, the Germans would have been referred to as Krauts or other such names cast upon them to take away the humanity of the enemy. Eisenhower refers to the savage fighting as if to put them in the role of the savage that needs to be destroyed in combat. While stripping the Nazis of their humanity during combat, the Allied forces put themselves in the role of the hero and just fighter. As can be seen in Eisenhower's words, referring to the Allies as the free men of the world, trying to show that we are just in what we do when fighting in combat, and the enemy is a tyrannical evil that needs to be removed. This is the great noble undertaking that Eisenhower refers to. Again, making it easier on his soldiers, Eisenhower drew the line of us versus them, where us as the in-group are doing good by fighting them as the out-group. The soldiers storming the beach would have suffered from both physical and mental stresses. Through seeing their wounded comrades and bullets and mortars landing all around them, there was a pressure put on them which would have evoked a cognitive and emotional reaction. These men would have, however, displayed an adaptive stress reaction while making their way to the shore. Men reported the cohesiveness of the units involved and the sentiments for their leadership taking them there. The Department of the Army shows that this trust in leadership, the feelings of loyalty and duty, and the esprit de corps of the unit bring about an adaptive stress reaction during combat, helping the soldiers through such severe mental and physical stresses. Because of the location of battle, removing soldiers from the battlefield would have been a challenge. Removing casualties to sustain physical wounds was already a challenge, and most were treated right there on the shore. There would have also been a pressure for soldiers to continue to fight even though they were wounded or possibly extremely exhausted. Leaders were killed and others stepped up to ensure that the line was still strong and that the men were still fighting. All of this would have made treatment of combat stress very hard. Though the battle ended and soldiers were then sent out of combat for treatment, combat stress could and most likely did occur without treatment. Lieutenant Colonel Grossman uses a model comprised of fear, exhaustion, guilt, hate, fortitude, and the burden of killing to explain the possible causation of psychiatric casualties. The main factors that can be seen on D-Day are fear, exhaustion, guilt, and fortitude. Fear, though explained to be the least important factor, was felt during D-Day. The soldiers had to wade through water into the unknown or fall from the sky while being shot at by the Nazi troops. Each soldier had to see the effects of the Nazi fighting as soldiers around them were being killed or injured. This would have provoked a fear response, as explained by many of the men that day. Seeing their soldiers killed would have also triggered the guilt because they must have felt responsible for the soldiers around them. This can be seen in some of the heroic actions of attempting to bring the wounded or dead men to shore while being shot at by the enemy. The soldiers on that day would have completely drained their reserve and reached complete exhaustion. They dealt with extreme physical and mental exhaustion and had to reach into their private reserve to continue to fight. This overexhaustion could bring them to where they are incapable of continuing and could lead to psychiatric casualties. Since this was a continuous battle, there was no rest in sight, and most would have only been looking forward to the end of the battle. Many emotions could come from fighting a war in trenches, where both sides are heavily armed. For the Allied forces making their way up the beach, there would have been a sense of helplessness while waiting in the trenches to advance. Additionally, there would have been a great sense of fear and uncertainty as the Nazi forces continued to bombard their locations. This could bring some to feel a sense of waiting to die, as though they are just sitting there waiting for the Nazis to hit their spot directly. This can be extremely stressful and has been seen throughout both world wars to bring a psychological difficulties. This waiting in trenches during bombardment is what brought psychiatrists and psychologists during World War I to name the psychological reaction shell shock. Soldiers waited there as the shells landed and the loud noises picked up around them, shocking them and bringing them to an extreme state of stress. During World War II, the sentiment of the soldiers is that they were doing the right thing by ridding the world of the evil Nazi forces. This brought them to feel that the killing in war was needed and justified, possibly preventing some negative psychological reactions to combat. Along with feeling that war was right, the soldiers received a welcoming back from the war as though they were heroes. Not all wars were like this, and some soldiers were received as though they were vicious killers committing war crimes across the world. For the soldiers of D-Day, they will continue to be seen as heroes who fought a hard war and were victorious against the evil Nazi forces, bringing the beginning of the end to World War II. To this day, D-Day is remembered every year on June 6th. Even 70 years later, veterans of this war returned to Normandy Beach to commemorate their victory. Not only do they themselves commemorate their victory, but many others throughout Europe celebrate their victory from that day. On June 6, 2014, Jim Martin, a paratrooper who jumped into Normandy, visited the site once again and donned his full paratrooper outfit. He then jumped into Normandy just as he did that day 70 years before. Today, a memorial stands in Bedford, Virginia, commemorating the victory in France and honoring those who fell there. It was dedicated by President George W. Bush on June 6, 2001, 57 years after the assault. This memorial not only stands as a reminder, but may also continue to show the veterans who fought that day that what they did was right and appreciated by their country and the world. The Battle for the Beach in Normandy, France during D-Day was a fierce battle, demonstrating many psychological factors of war. The soldiers adapted to the stresses of war better through the cohesion that was felt and the thoughts of doing something great for the world. These brave men went through the severe physical and mental stresses as they fought their way to victory, fighting against the forces that they already dehumanized in their mind.